Hey guys, it's Ryan and today's video is on 4 beginner tactics and tips for playing Infinity. This video is a bit more focused on once you've learned to play the game and you want to know what to focus on next to just get a bit better at the game. I'll talk about what the tactic is, when best to use it, and why I recommend it. Usually that it helps you learn the game better. Before we begin, remember to like and subscribe for more. It really helps me out, so now let's begin. The first tactic is slicing the pie and learning to peek. Why? Well, it comes up a lot and it's a great example of a rules understanding and applying that. So what is slicing the pie and peeking? Well, in short, it's moving from being in total cover to just coming out enough to see exactly what you want to see and nothing more, and then taking a shot. With a cooperative opponent, which should be most of the time, this means you can usually find the right angle to get what you want. Now, the tactic here is not you gotta slice every pie and peek every corner, but more an understanding of when you gotta do it and why you gotta do it. So when do you want to do it? Simply when you don't want to take 2 fights at once. That's a trick for when you start saying, yeah, this will work. You'll know when this is as you would have 2 ARO PCs looking at one spot where you need to remove them one by one. Since line of fire is open information, you can find a line or angle where you can take usually 1 fight unless these models are pretty much vertically stacked. Now, obviously, you don't just slide out and stay out and take each fight. If you're worried about running out of orders or hidden ARO pieces, you may want to slide out, then slide back in to prevent retaliation in the reactive turn. Avoiding those hits that you didn't need to take is always nice. I mentioned teaching your rules, and well, what rules do they teach? It's a simple but important one. Everything in Infinity happens all at once, and when you declare move plus action, that action, be it hack or importantly a BS attack, happens at any single point in your movement. Now, all the burst needs to happen at that one point, but it means you move back and forth and can take a shot in between. This is also useful to know if you're making an attack in the open, which is not always advisable, but you can pick the best spot in your movement to maybe get a better range band. However, and this is key, it goes both ways, so your opponent can also pick at which point they shoot you, so they can get a pretty advantageous shot on you. These 2 points don't need to be the same point, so keep that in mind. So, as you can see, this can be an important one to know as you play the game. It's one you're very likely to learn from just playing the game, but knowing the rules and getting the reps in will help you understand the finer points of moving and shooting. From one movement tip to the next, but this one is far simpler, and I've talked about it before, but it is worth knowing. So it's doing fun movement tricks like dodge moving, cautious moving, and climbing and jumping, and how to get the most out of them. And so what do I mean by all of this? Well, let's start with the first one, dodge movement. What's special about that? Well, this is where knowing the order expenditure sequence comes in. So you declare dodge at a given time, then you roll, contesting or normal roll, and then you apply the effects of the roll or move in the resolution phase. The main benefit of this is that the dodge movement itself does not provoke any AROs, since there is no space in which your opponent can declare an ARO. The activation of a dodge, yes, but the movement itself, no. This can set up some nice long scale combos like Berserk, Triangulated Fire, or doing some kind of stage dive hacking attempt, which is really fun. The second one is Cautious Move, which has a nice wiki page to explain it, but the long and short of it is, if you start out of line of fire, you can long skill move your first move value, and you provoke no AROs assuming you end outside the line of fire. This can be used to cross gaps with no cover, and combined with smoke and stealth as a really nice way to get around tricky situations that only camo or guns would have resolved. Next up is knowing that jumping and climbing while being a long skill without Super Jump and Climbing Plus can still be useful. Sometimes you just have to get up a container and the order cost is secondary. Fortunately, it's not inefficient as before, as now you get basically your silhouette free for movements, and you can now measure from any point in your silhouette. So going up something 1.5 times your size should be a lot easier, even on 4/4 models. So just remember, there is more to movement than just running between cover and shooting on the way. Think about the table and if there is a better angle you can take and if you can get there. If the answer is yes, or yes with very few buts, maybe consider doing that rather than the more direct approach. Forking is the next tactic, and I'm looking forward to the auto-generated subtitles on this one. So what is forking? Forking is when you create only bad decisions for your opponent when making an active turn play. although it can be done in reactive. You may have heard of a similar phrase called create dilemmas, not problems. A problem can be solved, a dilemma has no good outcome. Your opponent is not going to like getting forked, since there is not an easy answer. I'll give an example to put this explanation to an end. Let's say I have a warband with some CC skills, an SMG and a chain rifle, like say a Varangian, and I charge it into base-to-base contact in that first move. Now in ARO, my opponent is presented with 3 ARO options. They can shoot me as I run into melee to contest the SMG burst or CC attack. They can dodge to avoid my potential templates, or CC me back for when I attempt to melee him or shoot him. Whatever they choose is not advantageous unless they're pretty stacked, as my opponent could declare dodge, and that would be the safest, but is not usually a great roll as it's burst 1 and usually no more than 13s. But then I just CC them on something like CC23. Maybe I have martial arts and then their dodge is worsened even further, or I shoot them with an SMG, so that's 3 dice versus 1, which is not great odds for them either. My opponent could shoot me, which is effective, but I could contest that with 3 dice versus 1, or I can use CC, which is much more likely to win, and may even oppose those same negative mods from martial arts or something like CC attack -3. I could, if I'm feeling spicy, just template them and eat the potential wound on my end, because he could whiff the shot, or I make the save. I have 2 chances to succeed, where he has 1 chance to fail and not eat a wound. I would also now be in melee, which is largely where I want to be, and then I could just continue melee him. And that same scenario also applies if he decides to melee me. I can just eat the wound and template him. What I've done here is taken a unit that has multiple tools and found the best situation to put them in. I've offered my opponent nothing great, but they still have choices, which is always a positive in terms of game design. This is the philosophy behind forking. Warbands, but anything with a shotgun or a template and a burst weapon can do fairly well. Some of the best forkers in the games are Varangians, half of Steel Phalanx, the Serf tag and the Stigmata in Nomads, using hacking rather than BS attacks and melee. It's a basic tactic that you should know that sometimes your best play is to just be aggressive and to realise that in the active turn, you're the one that needs to make the decisions to win. If your opponent has to make a decision, it's the ones you want them to make. Keep this in mind with skirmishers and other pieces in camo, because they can offer similar choices where the only AROs you can declare against a marker state is delay, dodge and discover. You can really react depending on what they do to your benefit. Keep in mind your opponent's ARO options and you can slowly use that to turn it in your favour. So always keep forking in mind and keep the dirty version out of your mind. Effective use of hidden deployment is something that is really key to getting most out of those units, and some of the most feared units in the game are hidden deployment users. Gutters, Noctifers, Anathematics, Nadirs are all feared for a reason. Why? Well, basically it's because in hidden deployment they're immune to everything except Biotech Vor and being censored. Even then, it's largely up to you to reveal them, which can make for some devastating AROs, lethal attack runs, or some very sneaky skirmisher action. These 3 are pretty self-explanatory, but they have a good amount of thought that goes into them. So let's start with AROs. So hidden deployment AROs are always fun, or not very fun if you're the one being targeted by them. So how do you get the most out of your hidden deployment AROs? Well, step 1 is use a template weapon. The Missile Launcher, Noctifer, Flammensphere, Nadir, and the Swiss Miss are the famous ones that just work because you can just catch things that are unexpectedly bunched up, punishing for those who aren't 100% on the ball, which can and will be devastating, as there's only a few fire teams that won't mind dodging this, such as Teutonic Knights, but even then, I don't want to risk it. Templates are not required for hidden deployment AROs, but it helps. So a good gun is nice, but placement is really the key thing to know. And so what is a good placement? Well, that's a video of itself, but there are 2 big ones. You can watch a good lane that is not already covered, and this is more obvious, and a good player may be able to sort of out your PCs and approach that lane more cautiously and essentially nullify the effect of a hidden deployment ARO piece. A hidden deployment hacker can basically set the back and also cause your opponent to pause for thought, as every repeater they walk through is just a little bit more spicier. The other place to put them is literally along the same line as another ARO piece, so that when something nasty enough comes along, you can kill it dead with that second attack. For example, a nasty tag, it can go from wanting to gunfight one ARO piece to death to then suddenly have to deal with hidden deployment AP weapons as well. Not something they particularly want to do, is now they either have to tank a shot, which is not impossible but not fun, or split burst, which drastically reduces the chance of doing what they want. And I have had this being used against me, and I believe I was shooting an Epsilon with my Seraph, and then I got surprised by a Lynx plasma rifle, and it really didn't do much to my Seraph. Fortunately, arm 10 in cover is fantastic, but it was a bit of a teeth clencher, and it knocked out my Bulletier. I had to then methodically take not great fights to clear out both the Lynx and the Epsilon, which I did, but I was not a fan of this. I think I ultimately dumped all my burst into the Lynx and then soaked the sniper shots, which was not fun, but yeah, so keep this one in mind. If it had been a missile launcher, then that would have been most of my list's teeth gone. So why are hidden deployment units good at attack runs? Well, they're not inherently good at them from the hidden deployment, but it's the skills that surround it, mostly the min-6 and the surprise attack. So hidden deployment will keep you safe, either hoping to go straight into camo or coming straight out swinging with a potential -9 to your opponent's shots coming back, or 3 if they're smart and they dodge. This can make things like a cutter and an Anathematic just geek things on its first activation. Hidden deployment models with a multi-sniper rifle or missile launcher can start out in similar positions to ARO pieces, but can come out of camo and shoot something down immediately. This one can require some forethought to do amazingly, but alternatively you can come into camo and then move around before then safely coming out of camo and utilising the surprise attack. Here, hidden deployment is delaying the big whammy until you're fairly happy that you can do it safely, then safely coming out swinging and start snowballing things in your favour. Finally is sneakily stealing objectives. It's simple, it's basic, and it works. And it's exactly what you think it is. I have won games with Trinitarians sitting on their backside till turn 3 and doing the objective and either having gone second so they can't ARO me out of the play, or I have done enough damage to their list that if I'm going first, they can't then dig me out on their turn. It's basic, but basics work. So that was my video on basic tactics and plays that you should probably know. Was this helpful or not? Let me know in the comments below. And remember to like and subscribe for more. Next time I'm going to have a video on hackers. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time.